Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist of the Abyss, and this is my review for Freezing Vibrations, Episode 6. Now, like I said last week, the arc that they skipped before, they're putting it in the middle of this arc, and what that tells you is that since Freezing Vibrations only has, like 12 or 13 episodes, what it means is that they're taking an entire arc and trying to squeeze it into just a few episodes. So that alone tells you that they're going to be skipping a lot of stuff. So development for characters like Holly Rose, she gets more development than she did in this episode. In this episode, she literally did like nothing. She stood around. She like poked her head into Lewis's room for like 2 seconds. And then she appeared at the end when she materialized Excalibur, so like that's it. But in the manga, she does so much more. So there's, again, not only are they trying to squeeze this entire arc into a few episodes, so not only are they skipping stuff, but the stuff they actually cover from the manga, they end up changing for some reason. So first I'm just going to go through the episode and how it is in the episode, and I'm going to go over how it went in the manga and how it's much better than what happened in the anime. But first, we learn a little bit about Lewis. He attends Genetics UK with Holly Rose. We learn from Violet that the Bridget family donates a lot of money to Chevalier. And we learn throughout the episode that Lewis is just an awful person. He's an awful person. He just sucks. He sucks as a human being. He's trash. He's literally the worst piece of crap in the Freezing verse. All right, the worst piece of crap in the entire series. Okay, like even some of the Chevalier guys like Scarlett O'Hara and the secretary who's running the E-Pandora project, the one who tortured Elizabeth and is just sacrificing the E-Pandoras because he feels like it. Even he's not as bad as Lewis, because at the end of the day, what he's doing is for the sake of humanity. But with Lewis, he's doing it because he can, because he feels like it. So Lewis is in fact the worst piece of crap in the entire Freezing series. But it's pretty clear from the get-go that Satella is kind of scared of Lewis. Her attitude changes, her behavior in general just changes, and as soon as she, before they left for Bali, she was one way. They get to Bali, she sees Lewis, and all of a sudden she changes like that. And Kazuya, he actually notices this change. It's just that he thinks it's his fault because he was praising the Bridget family. So he thinks that she's mad at him for not separating her from her family, not thinking of her as her own person, which I can't really blame him for that, because it's not like it's incredibly obvious that, oh my god, the reason she's mad is not because of me, but because her brother's a piece of crap. He doesn't know that. I don't think he even saw Satella's reaction to seeing Lewis, because he was behind her at first. Then he walked in front of her to shake hands with Lewis and all that. So I don't even think he saw her reaction. So it's not bad. It's not Kazuya's not exactly an idiot. He's not an idiot for not noticing what's wrong with Satella and thinking it's his fault. But right now he just doesn't realize what's going on. But we end up seeing Satella in her room. She thinks that Kazuya is knocking at her door, but it's actually Lewis. And they get to talking, and again we get to see what kind of an awful person Lewis is. But in the middle of this, they make Satella look like an idiot, pretty much. Apparently she couldn't figure out that Chevalier was behind all the stuff that was happening to the Mabley family. And even after Lewis told her, she couldn't even figure out why they would do that, even though she was just talking with Elizabeth the day before about how she wanted to, get the Mabley family involved and fix this whole E-Pandora situation. So they're just making Satella look like an idiot that Lewis himself had to point out. Doesn't a Mabley girl go to your school? Wasn't she a Mabley girl from your school involved in the E-Pandora experiment? Like, the fact that he had to go that far is just ridiculous. But, another thing, I'm not gonna like just try, like lower the rating for this episode because of the fact that the skipped arc they're putting in the middle of another arc. I put my disappointment in that is covered in my previous episode ranking, but anything bad that happens in this episode because of what they did last episode, I'm still gonna consider that. And in this episode, Lewis says that he and Holly Rose declined the invitation to the E Pandora experiment, and that makes absolutely zero sense. The reason they didn't go to the experiment is because of what happened in this arc. That's why they weren't at the E Pandora lab, right? But because they added the arc into the middle of the E Pandora arc, they had to change his reason, and they said that it was because he declined the invitation. But since when does Chevalier invite their soldiers to do stuff? No, they don't invite them, they order them. They can't decline an order. Could Elizabeth decline the order because she was from the Mabley family? No. Could Satella decline the order because she's from the Elbridget family? No. So why would Lewis be able to, and freaking Holly Rose be able to decline the order? That doesn't make sense. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a minor part of this episode in particular, more of a major part of previous episodes. But like I said, I already expressed my disappointment at that with previous ratings, so I'm just gonna focus more on this episode. And after that point, it's just Lewis breaking Satella down. I mean, we get to see parts of her past, and we learn why exactly she became the untouchable queen. It's because of Lewis doing all this stuff to her in her past, stripping her naked and raping her and doing all this stuff to her. That's why she was the untouchable queen. That's why she's uncomfortable with other people touching her, especially in the beginning of the first season. But he ends up breaking Satella down to the point where she just says, do whatever you want to me. I'm your doll, pretty much. And that's when he hits her. And his reasoning behind it is some stupid, crazy crap. Lewis is insane. He really is. He's crazy. And we can see once he leaves, he goes back to his room. He's like freaking out, and Holly Rose is standing there looking in at what he was doing, just freaking how he was freaking out and stuff. But the next day, Kazuya goes to invite Satella to breakfast to try and cheer her up and perhaps apologize for what he thinks is his fault. And she says no, and she has all these hickeys on her and stuff like that, and she just declines. But then Lewis ends up inviting Kazuya to breakfast, and he pretty much says, I want you to end this relationship you have with my sister. I want you to, here's some money. That should be compensation enough. Go back to genetics, Japan, or East Genetics. Become partners with someone else. My sister's gonna quit becoming a Pandora. She's gonna stay here with me, and all this stuff. And Kazuya, this is when Kazuya actually does something pretty cool. He kind of he tears up the papers and the checks and the money and stuff, and he says, what I do with Satella is none of your business, okay? The people in the relationship are her and me. All you are her little brother. That's all you are, her little brother, right? What we do is none of your concern, and I don't need to talk about it with you, and you have no influence on our relationship. And then he leaves. So that was actually pretty cool, Kazuya. It was even cooler in the manga, but whatever. After this, there are these scenes with him and Violet. Don't really care about them. Who cares, in all seriousness. After this, Lewis ends up calling Kazuya and Satella outside, and he starts to screw around with Satella in order to screw with Kazuya. And this is when anime Kazuya proves that he's anime Kazuya and not manga Kazuya. He's just really lame. I mean, the guy should be furious, shouldn't he? This guy is messing with the girl he likes, and all he can do is just say, "She's not that kind of girl. How could you be so cruel to her? I still believe in her," and all this stuff. And he's like, and he ends up saying, that she's the person that he loves, and he's got this big smile on his face. And I'm thinking, well, why are you smiling? The guy's just screwing with the girl you literally, literally, right? He's screwing with her and beating her and all this crap, and you're sitting there smiling like, I still love her. You're like, no. Activate freezing, which he should have done from the get-go. Activate freezing, walk over to Lewis and beat him up. He deserves it. But he doesn't. He just sits there with his stupid look on his face. And then Holly Rose comes out. Lewis orders her to cut Kazuya's arm off, so she materializes Excalibur, her Volt weapon, and then she charges him, and that's how the episode ends. Though we also learn at this point that Satella is not, she's not legit brothers, and she's not a legit sibling to Lewis and Violet. They're half siblings because her mother was a mistress of her father. They all have the same father, but her mother is a mistress and therefore different from Lewis and Violet's. But that's that. But as far as how things went in the manga, it was completely different. Satella looked much better. Okay, first of all, Lewis wasn't like raping Satella in this episode at all. Oh, in this part of the manga, I mean, he wasn't raping Satella. He went to her room, and first of all, I'll skip some of the stuff that they skipped just for the sake of like saving time. But Satella, when Lewis comes into her room, she doesn't just give up right away. She actually fights back against Lewis. She says, "No, I'm not the same person you used to know. I'm different now. I'm stronger." Then she picks up like a table or something, with one hand, breaks it, and then she threatens to kill Lewis. She says, "I'm a Pandora. Killing a man or two is easy for me." All right, so she just threatens Lewis right then and there, and she actually admits that she's in love with Kazuya as well. So Lewis, he's kind of just like losing the argument here. So in order to try and, he goes to extremes to try to break Satella, and I couldn't really tell if the room was just, because there were, in the actual episode, there were these scenes where we could see their past, Lewis and Satella's past together. In the manga, we see these scenes, but I couldn't really tell. It looked as though the room was made of screens, and Lewis, he picks up this remote and hits play or something, and you can hear the dialogue going on, and like Satella screaming for help and like begging Lewis not to do things to her, and then how she ends up giving in and all this stuff. You can hear it, but we can see it in the manga, but I can't really tell if, like, you can kind of see Satella looking around, but I can't really tell if that's because there were screens in the room that were showing the images. But the point is that she can hear what was going on back then. Apparently Lewis recorded it, and then he threatens to show all of that stuff to Kazuya. That's what finally ends up breaking Satella. So she ends up giving in from that because she doesn't want Kazuya to see her that way and hear her that way and think of her that way. And then he doesn't rape her after this. He doesn't strip her naked. What he does is he ties her up, and then he just starts beating her with his belt. He just starts beating her on her back over and over and over and over and over. So, yeah. What happens after that in the manga is that Holly Rose actually has scenes. They weren't just skipped. She's an actual character with a little bit of development, but she ends up approaching Satella the next day at breakfast, and she's asking her, like, "Were you with Lewis last night?" And Satella immediately, obviously, she thinks that she knows what was going on. But Holly Rose says, before she can answer, it's perfectly natural. I mean, you don't have to hold back for me, it's perfectly natural for a brother and a sister to talk to each other, So Satella goes, "Oh yeah, that's right." And then she admits that her and Lewis were together. And then Holly just picks up a glass of water and throws it at Satella. And then she's like, "No, it's not natural. All right, it's not natural for a brother and a sister to spend 5 hours together in a room, okay?" And then she tells Satella, like, this is a direct quote from the manga. She says, "I want you to stop bending over on all fours for Lewis. He's my partner." Okay, so Holly, she's not pleased at all about she legitimately likes Lewis, so she doesn't like the fact that Satella's coming in and stealing him from her. But then Lewis actually sees this. He comes over and he's not pleased at all. He gets mad at Holly for doing that to Satella and everything like that. And then Kazuya ends up showing up, so then he just grabs Holly and walks away. Um, they end up Holly and Lewis end up talking that night in his room, and Holly just kind of goes off. She snaps, and she ends up calling Lewis disgusting and Satella disgusting, and the relationship they have disgusting. And that's when Lewis just flips. Right, so then he ends up raping Holly. Holly's the one he rapes, not Satella. He has her like he had her like up against a window and everything. He was telling her all this crap like, you're nothing to me. All you are is a placeholder for Satella. That's the only reason I used you. That's the only reason I got close to you. You really aren't anything to me. Like he was just telling her all this awful stuff. And then after that, we go back to some canon material. No, it's all canon material. I mean, we go back to stuff the anime actually covered. He ends up calling Satella and Kazuya out in the rain, but Holly's actually there too. And he actually starts screwing with her first. He says, "Who am I?" And she's like, Lewis. Then he just slaps her. He's like, "No, who am I?" And she says, "My master." And then he does the same thing to Satella. And at first she doesn't answer. She's freaking out, like, because Kazuya's right there. She doesn't want Kazuya to see her like that. But in the end, she ends up giving in and calling Lewis my master. And then that's when Kazuya ends up freaking out. He gets angry. And Kazuya in the manga is so much better than the Kazuya in the anime. He really is. He starts talking to Lewis, and there's no smiling involved at all. He's mad. He's mad. And there's actually, I'll even show you a picture from the manga, okay? He pretty much says the same exact thing. Like, if you can see this, that is not exactly a smile on his face. Okay, that is not a smile on his face. So, the Kazuya in the manga is much better than the Kazuya in the anime. And then Lewis starts trying to beat him up. And Kazuya's resisting, and this is what got me. All right, this is what cements the Kazuya in the manga as being better than the Kazuya in the anime. While he's resisting Lewis, he says to Lewis that he's prepared. That he says that he's in love with Satella, and that he's prepared to give his life for her because that's what it means to be her limiter. Right? That was it for me. That's what got me. Right? And so that's what got Satella too. She starts crying and she has her hand over her mouth and everything, and it meant the world to her to hear that this guy that she likes is willing to die for her. But that the Kazuya in the manga is much better. But even in the manga, he didn't use freezing right away, so I don't know why. But that's pretty much that covers the differences in the manga for the stuff that the anime covered or didn't cover. But I honestly don't even know what rating to give this episode, to be honest. I mean, I guess if I was an anime-only viewer, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But since I'm a manga viewer, or manga reader, and I know what happened in the manga, and I read what happened in the manga, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Because the manga really is much better. It actually develops Holly Rose. It shows us more of Lewis. It's just better. It really is. It's just better. But yeah, that's really it for this long review of Freezing, since I pretty much reviewed both the episode and the manga at the same time. Like I said, a good episode if you're an anime-only viewer, but if you read the manga, then they skipped a lot of stuff that was actually good, so in that case, it's a 6 out of 10. But that's it for now. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.